this sermon is arrows, it's all about the potential. Arrows, it's all about the potential. So what do we know about arrows? Arrows, it's a shaft sharpened at the front and with feathers or veins at the back, shot from a bow as a weapon or for sport. It is a mark or sign resembling an arrow used to show direction or position a pointer. Arrows, how do we use them? How would we use them? During the times of the Bible, they were used for war. They were used for the chase of prey, and they were used to describe lightning from heaven along with divination. Others saw them as a symbol or representation of calamity inflicted by God. Some of sudden danger, others of bitter words and false testimony. So let's look at the story of King Joash and Israel and a dying prophet Elisha. In the second book of Kings, chapter 13, beginning at verse 14, we read that King Joash is found weeping over Elisha, speaking of the chariots of Israel and their horsemen. We can see how Joash connected the success of Israel to the lifeline of Elisha. Without Elisha, there would be no victory. So Elisha tells him to take a bow and some arrows. So what does Joash do? He grabs some bows and some arrows. At this point, we are reading through this, and it all seems good. Elisha is instructing, Joash is obeying. But the following verses begin to show the true resolve of King Joash. You see, it's one thing to pick up that cross, to pick up that charge, to pick up that prophecy, but it's another to actually use it. So we notice in verse 16, Elisha has to instruct Joash to put his hand on the bow. Now let's go to this really quick. So he tells King Joash, he says, go grab the arrow, go grab the bow and go grab some arrows. So he goes and he grabs them, right? He grabs a bunch of them. Right? I'm not going to drop this, I promise. I'm not going to drop this. He grabs a bunch of them. Now, Elisha is sick. He's dying. He's in bed. So, again, Joash comes to him, and let's just imagine this. He grabs it, and he goes and he just stares at Elisha. All right, I got the bow and I got the arrows. So Elisha looks at him and he says, grab the bow. In other words, what did you think? I was going to shoot it for you? There's a reason when we read this and we go into verse 16, it tells him to put his hand on the bow. And what that means is when you place your hand on a bow, and I wish I had a bow and arrow right now, there's one thing to grab it as if it's an artifact or something of no value. But then when you grab something or a weapon, you grab it in a fashion, in a certain way of grabbing when you're getting ready to use it. And then you flip it, and then your other hand grabs the string in the bow. So Elisha was telling him, he was like, just don't hold it. Grab it because you're about to use it. So again, he tells him to put his hand on the bow, and then here's an example that just came to me. Let's imagine us asking God for an answer, pleading with him for some form of revelation in this difficult walk. God then commands you to get your Bible. And we grab that Bible, and now we run back to the feet of God in our prayer room or closet or space. And then we go, here I am, God, Bible in hand. And then there's silence. We don't understand why there's silence. We're waiting for God to give us the next step. And the thing is this. Did we forget how to use that arrow or that word? You see, in order to use the word, you must read the word. And in order to read the word, you must open the word. We all know in 1 Corinthians 13:11, it says that when I was a child, I spoke and thought and reasoned as a child. But when I grew up, I put away childish things. Spoke, thought, and reasoned. That all became elevated as you became an adult. So how is it that as grown adults, we are still unaware of how to use the things God has given us to combat the enemy and all of his tactics? So what am I saying here is this. When you're in your prayer closet and you're coming to God, that example I use, he tells you, okay, go get your word. Go get the Bible. Go get my word. Go get it. You run, you get it, and you run back with it. Okay, God, what do I do next? It's common sense that in order to read the word, you got to open the book. Amen. We want God to tell us to open the book. Why do we want God to tell us to open the book? We know what to do with it.
Yes, amen.
You young men and women, if you ever run or you play sports, you know to put on sneakers before you play sports. You don't put on Timbs or rain boots. There are certain things in this walk that are common sense. That, for example, with Elisha, when he looked at Joash, he looked at him like, "What are you looking at me for? I'm gonna pull that arrow for you. Like I'm gonna shoot it for you. You know how to grab that. You're a king. You know how to go to war." So here's another way to look at it. The Bible is your sheath and arrows, which represent verses to combat the enemy. Your faith is the bow. The activation of that faith comes by reaching back over your shoulder into the sheath to grab one of those arrows. And the fulfilling of your trust in God's word is to release those very arrows toward that which is attempting to kill you. And we all know that in war, it's kill or be killed. So it's not that we aren't equipped. We have what we need at arm's reach, yet because we have become so dependent upon another's ability, we forgot how to use our own. So here we go back into verse 16. It says that Elisha instructs King Joash to put his hand on the bow, which means to not sling it around or hold it like an artifact, but instead to ride your hand upon the grip of the bow while your other hand grips the arrow and strings. Elisha then proceeds to place his hand on the king's hands. Now there's something so powerful about that I'm going to get to in a page or two. I didn't look at it that way until like 3 days ago when I was typing this. I kind of want to jump to it, but I don't want to jump to it. So let's just keep going. So Elisha then proceeds to place his hands on the king's hands, which was to act as an extension of God's blessing over him. And now he says in verse 17, open the east window. And what was east? It was Gilead. And who occupied it? The Syrians or the Arams. And then King Joash is commanded to shoot. So he shot. Elisha goes on to say, the arrow of the Lord's deliverance and the arrow of deliverance from Syria. So imagine that. This is funny about God because he's always doing new things, but there's a method that never changes. Because check this out. Joash was fighting a battle that was already won. Doesn't that sound familiar? That reminds you of something. Aren't we all fighting a battle that's already won? You see how God works? All he did was shoot 2 arrows towards the east. And he had proclaimed victory over the Arams, or the Syrians in modern day, and then deliverance from them. Fighting a battle that's already won. You see, the first arrow represented the force of victory that would take place, and God was promising this. The second was deliverance due to the result of the force that was to be used. Oh, and by the way, what's the significance of shooting an arrow towards an opposing territory? Real quick, just yell it out. What's the significance of shooting an arrow into the air towards an oppressing territory? Declaring war. That's what it meant in biblical days. When you shot an arrow, you were claiming war. And this is what I love right here. So not only is God equipping us with the ability to declare war in the spiritual realm against our enemies, he has given us the assurance that we will completely destroy them as long as we do not relent. The best part is that God does it in such style. Let's look at verse 17 again. It says that Elisha goes on to say that King Joash must strike the Syrians at Aphek until he had destroyed them. See, I love this because God will always use what was once turmoil to be your stage for victory. He won't take you somewhere else to have victory somewhere. He'll take you right back to that same dark place to have victory. This is what I love here because anybody know the story of the War of Aphek? I know Hector does. I'm just kidding. Hector usually knows that stuff. I'm going to explain it right now. In the book of 1 Samuel chapter 4, the Israelites were defeated by the Philistines. And the Philistines had taken the Ark of the Covenant. They took them back to their encampment. The name of their encampment? Aphek. That's where the Philistines rested. After they fought the Israelites and they took the Ark of the Covenant. And then it was returned 7 months later. That's true. That's a whole other sermon. So let's think about this. In that scene, during that time, in the historical library of the Israeli people, they lost the Ark of the Covenant. Their high priest Eli died when hearing about it, and then it's returned to them about 7 months later. No thanks to them, but because of the power upon the Ark of the Covenant. So God said, not only will you win, but you will crush them in a place which was once a terrible memory of defeat. And you must do it there until they are consumed. This means to completion. So now we're heading into verse 18 where Elisha tells King Joash to take the arrows. And he tells them to strike the ground. And Joash strikes 3 times and then stops. In verse 19, we see Elisha become angry with Joash because he was upset. No one told Joash to stop. He determined that. He decided that. But now, because his lack of zeal, he will strike Syria 3 times. So let's analyze this very quickly. Elisha says, take the arrows, as in prepare to use them. Then he tells King Joash to strike the ground, which meant knocking your enemy down to the earth. Joash then continues to strike the ground, but stops at 3. Joash clearly didn't understand what was going on there. Remember that prior to shooting the arrows 3 times, Elisha made a declaration of victory for the first 2 that he shot in the air out of the east window. So Joash was aware that these arrows represented victory. King Joash had no idea regarding the amount of potential that was in his hands. To get a better idea, let's jump to verse 20. Elisha died. So we all know this. Elisha dies, and in the coming years, the Moabites had started to invade the land. And as they were invading the land, the natives, which were the Israelites or the Judeans, depending on which side of the kingdom you were on, they saw the raiders coming in, the Moabites. They saw them coming in. And so they took a body they were burying and they put it in the what do you call the same burial area of Elisha. Elisha was dead, so they put him there. And when they placed the body there, the body touched Elisha's bones. The body stood up and walked out. So here's what I love about this. Elisha, when he was alive, placed his hands on the king's hands. There's a power that he had, that God had poured through him. There was a power. You see, his bones were able to revive a life. His hands, if Joash would have listened, would have revived an entire nation. Wow. Entire nation. He's dead, and his bones are doing something. Imagine alive. And that's what I'm saying. King Joash didn't understand the severity and the weight of what Elisha was doing. When King Joash went there, he was just terrified. He knew that Israel's fortune and grace and mercy were tied to the prophet Elisha because they were all corrupt. It was Elisha. It was Elisha constantly being in communion with God. Elisha constantly being at the will of God. So when he saw him dying, he was like, my father, my father. He didn't go to him because he respected, he respected him as a father or as a position. He just knew his connection to God, and he knew their victory was dependent upon him. So Elisha's last act for God is to say, okay, even though God knows, and he knows you're corrupt, we're going to bless you one more time. So you're going to grab the bow and arrows, you're going to put your hand in like you want to fight, and then I'm going to put my hand in and I'm going to bless him. Now he got upset because he only shot it 3 times. So here's the thing. Many of us have gone through life and we beg God to get involved in what we're doing. We ask for his blessing. We ask for his interaction. And then when that happens, when we finally get our hands to the plow and God places his hands on that very same plow, and he's working with you in the fields, and he's working with you in every situation and circumstance, and every difficulty, whether it be marriage, financial, kids, even in the body of Christ, whatever it is, you finally got God with you, and you're working, and you can feel him working with you, but then you just decide to stop because it's enough. You just decide to stop because we define that it's enough. Thanks, God. I didn't need you for this season. Appreciate it. I've been there. You know how it is. You know, you're in a really dark place. You pray, and then you come to a point where somebody prophesies over you. You get really excited, and then you just stop praying to God. I've been there. Many a times I've been there. And that's what was happening with Joash, and Elisha knew it. But because of his obedience, he still carried out the blessing anyway. But when Joash went to him and he screamed out the chariots of Israel, he truly believed that as Elisha was going to go and die, that the army was going to be gone. There was going to be nothing of Israel left. Nothing. There was going to be nothing to save them, nothing to restore them, nothing at all. So he runs to him and he's asking for that blessing. And he's coming to him and you ever been in a situation where you beg somebody for help? You beg him to the point where poor Elisha had to get out of his dying bed. And you don't even, it's not that you don't care, you just don't believe enough. You just don't believe. You don't. Here's the thing. If you're on a game show and you have this bucket and they said, you're going to stand in that little booth and we're going to drop just buckets of money. You're going to keep going, and then as long as you keep going, you're just going to, whatever you accumulate, it's yours. You can take it home. Now, all of us would go and find the strength somewhere deep in us to be there for 2 to 3 days without food and water, just catching money. Just catching the money, just getting no buckle, just a few more hours. But think about King Joash. How much strength does it take to shoot a bow? But he only shot it 3 times, or 5 total, but 3 times. What made him stop? What made him say that was enough? What made him say, okay, this is all I need? He clearly didn't know what he needed. That's why he went to Elisha. That's why he went screaming and crying to Elisha. He knew he couldn't do it, so what made him stop? From the command, put your hands on the bow, to opening the east window, declaring war on that very thing that which has oppressed you for all these years, declaring victory in the name of God and deliverance from your oppression. It was all right there at King Joash's fingertips. But he didn't capture the potential of what was about to happen. He didn't realize what he was about to lose. You see, yes, if we read on toward the end of the chapter, Joash defeats the king of Syria 3 times. And he recaptures all the cities of Israel. And at that moment, it's a huge victory. But if we are to pull back from it and see the story in its entirety, there was so much potential. There was room so much more. You see, it's one thing to defeat your enemy, and it's another to destroy your enemy. You see, Israel, modern day Israel, is still at odds with the nation of Syria this very day. They've been fighting for over 2,700 years. 2,700 years of war and counting. Possibly all because of King Joash stopping at the 3rd strike. God didn't limit the potential of this king's campaign. The king did. You see, God is a respectful, just God. I truly believe that. I've always believed that. He's a just and respectful God. And we know that one side of God, that he can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, as he pleases, as he wills, because he is God, the God of Israel, the God of our fathers, our biblical forefathers. I don't mean the presidents, I mean our biblical, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph. But he's also just. So when you say no or it's enough, go back away. You're like, okay, you think it's enough. I'm going to tell the Creator it's enough. All right, 3 hours is enough. Check this out. 2 Kings chapter 4, it speaks of the widow who had nothing but a small jar of oil. God is getting ready to bless her through Elisha. Elisha tells her to get all the jars you can and just a few. And then we can picture them running to their neighbors and getting as many jars as they can possibly carry back to their house. Once they are back, Elisha says, go inside and shut the door behind you and your sons. Pour oil into all the jars, and as each is filled, put it to the side. So the widow obeyed, and when all the jars were full, she instructed her son to bring another jar. The son had let her know that there was no other jar left, and the oil stopped flowing. So in the scenario, what happened? Did the oil stop flowing because God said, okay, that's enough? Or did it stop because the son stated there weren't any jars left?
Jesus!
So jumping back to Elisha and King Joash, did the possibility of destroying Assyria become limited because God commanded it to be that way? Or was it because Joash didn't have any faith left? And I say faith because faith recognizes potential. Faith recognizes potential. Faith sees what many people can't see. Faith calls into existence things that people can't see or even understand. Like if I look at you two right here, you, Elijah, you, Richie Jr., right? You two guys right here. And I say, in 4 to 5 years, when we have 5,000 members in our own building, you guys will be leading the media team. I wouldn't even be a part of it anymore. I shocked you guys, didn't I? Don't get scared. But that's the faith I have, because faith realizes potential. Same thing for the worship team. I always see you guys on stage, I always speak about this in Bible studies and stuff. I always bring it back up because I love our worship team. I love our worship team. But it's going to come to the point that one day they're going to feel like we're shitting on Antonio. You need to stay over there because you're getting a little too excited. All right, you need to stay. That's why I was back there today, because Carlito was just, don't you do it. But I always see them on grand stages, and I see them, and I wholeheartedly believe that the day is going to come that they're going to be surrounded by hundreds of thousands of people just worshiping God. And the best part about it is that, to take it a step further, is this. It's that they're going to be paid to do what they love for God. Amen. We don't like to talk about that in church. We don't like to talk about money in church. But I would love to work for God full time. And not have to worry about, having a 9-to-5 job. I like my job. I do. I love my job, Michael. I love my job. Most might see this. King Joash was given the opportunity to do away with an oppressor that had hindered Israel all the days of his father, King Jehoahaz. How many times have we failed to see the potential of what is right in front of us? What is placed in our very hands, what was spoken over us and into us? Have you asked yourself, where has my zeal for the things of God gone? Why did I win the battle but not the war? Why was last month a great spiritual one, but this month I'm just not feeling it? I mean, I won the fight. I obtained the victory. So I'm going to let you guys in a secret. Real nice secret. Ready for this? The same way we have the potential to fall and get right back up, so does the enemy. The same way we have the potential to fall and get right back up, so does the enemy. You see, because you beat him at that moment, but didn't destroy him. And things that are not destroyed have an opportunity to heal. Oh, I'm coming. I'm coming. I was talking to POC Deacon Noel the other day. I was just in front of my computer for like 10 at night. I know my wife was mad because the light was on. I was like, babe, you want me to shut it off? She was like, no, you're okay, but you know when your wife is mad? She's like, no, it's fine. No, I'll sleep with the light on, it's fine. I'm like, all right, babe. You know, us as husbands, we're the ones that play stupid. Okay, babe, I'll just leave the light right, right on. You know. And I was like, wow. Because we talk about this walk being war, but we don't act like it's war. We just we will shove things off, we'll push it a distance. And when I mean distance, I mean we'll kick that spirit of perverseness, that spirit of arrogance and haughtiness and whatever the case may be. And when I say kick, I mean we'll keep it at a distance for about 6 to 8 months. And then it creeps right back in because we didn't take that extra step. We didn't exercise that faith to see the potential of the damage it can do. Here's the thing. Where I come from, a little bit of my testimony is I was born in the streets. Poor as a penny is what I would say, right? I grew up in Bushwick, and I was one of the only white Latinos there, so it was always a problem, right? Because I wasn't white enough for the white people, I wasn't Spanish enough for the Spanish people, so that's what happened to me. There was always a lot of fighting, and I was trained with people I knew in the street that when you fight somebody, hurt them so they don't come back. Right. You hurt them so they don't come back. You don't win the fight. You beat them to the point that they don't come back. You want to put that fear in them, if I come at Antonio again, it's going to be a problem. At the time, that didn't work because there's some thugs in Bushwick. That didn't work when I was a kid, but I always took that idea and I ran with it. And it's the same thing in this fight of faith. You don't come against the spirit of perverseness and say, listen, I need you to back off for 10 months. You don't do that. You look at the spirit of perverseness and you say, I need you to eradicate yourself from my life. And if you step here again, we're going to have a problem. A real big problem. A problem beyond what you can't even understand in the spiritual realm. You come back here, I will end you. That type of zeal we need to have. So every time you get ready to fight in your house, you get ready to fight for your children, you get ready to fight for your marriage or anything else, and you have that bow and arrow in your hand, and God has charged you with this blessing to say, okay, I got your back. I'm never going to start taking arrows up my sheath until I don't see anything of the enemy. Until he is obliterated, until he is brought to completion of nothing.
Amen. Wow, that was good. Amen.
So when you stare down that enemy, when you're clenching your fists and preparing for battle, think potentially of the damage it can cause if you don't put it down for good right now. Ask yourself, is this hindrance, this oppressor, this liar, is it worth my potential? Is it worth it? When you see it standing there and you know you can beat it, you know you can. There's many demons I face that I know I can beat and I let them just roll. I know I'm gonna knock them out of my life and I let them just roll. I'm just too lazy. I'm just not. I'd rather come back every 3 months and have the pastor pray for me and bring me out of my disgustingness every, like a quarterly visit, like going to the hospital.
Yeah.
Just keep, check up and all that stuff. And then, as I typed this sermon, I thought about potential. I thought about not myself. I thought about my home. I thought about my wife. I thought about my 2 boys. The potential that's in my life. I took that word potential and I said, no, that's what it is. That's what it is. It's not me. It's what's coming. It's what's coming. So when I'm standing between the enemy and my family, who is the potential, because I am where I am and I've gotten where I've gotten and this was so far I can go. But I know they can go places that I'll never go. And I'm looking at the enemy and I'm looking at the potential. I'm like, is it worth letting you through? Is it really worth letting you through?
Come on.
I mean, I can let you through and they can deal with what I dealt with. They can deal with perverseness. They can deal with arrogance. They can deal with the dumb spirit. They can deal with all that stuff. And I can probably pray them through it and pray them out of it. But I remember those scars. I remember those battles I should have won. And now that I'm grown and I'm a man and I know where to stand, I was like, you ain't going nowhere. You have no right in my home. You have no right in my bloodline. So if you want to fight, we're going to fight. And I got some brothers from Buying Space Fellowship who will fight with me. So as we used to say in the street, so what it do? God is good. He is magnificent in a way that I can never, ever describe. I could never, in a million years, put into a sentence how awesome He is. Because the opportunities He gives you, when he pulls you out of yourself, and you just see the story in its entirety, and you see the potential of your entire life. Because He knows that as long as you're in yourself, you don't see the whole picture. He has to pull you back. He has to see family and friends and colleagues and places He can possibly take you and the prophecy spoken over you and into you. And there's a reason why Elisha was so upset at King Joash, because he only shot 3 arrows. And it was because of this. Joash, in his mind, knew that 3 hours was enough. But here's the thing. God doesn't want you just to get through. He wants you to overcome. God doesn't want you to just get by. He wants you to stop and keep going. God wants to do something so radical with you that just enough is not enough for Him. It's not. Every time He chooses to speak it to each and every one of us, and utilize us and prophesy into our lives, He wants to shut the enemy up. He wants to make the enemy, as He's done since the beginning of time, makes him look stupid. And He'll just take any one of us. Any one of us. On the Bible study, I said, I never feel, what was the word I was saying? I never feel deserving of this or that I'm ready for this, because I know the word, and I know the word, it says that, He can take water from a rock and He can make a donkey speak. So every time I come up here, I come in here with that mindset. I'm either a rock spitting water or a donkey that's speaking. I know it sounds crazy, but it keeps me humble. Amen. So what is your potential? The bow and arrow is in your hands. You're taking hold. You're getting ready to use it. What is your potential? And how much faith are you willing to give? How much time? How much effort? How much are you willing to let go? To reignite that zeal. To reignite that war within ourselves. To not stop at 3. To come to God and say, I want all you got. But this is no joke. Whatever you can give me, whatever I'm worthy of, give it to me and I won't stop. I will not stop. I won't relent. I won't tarry. I won't give up. Give it to me. Trust me with it, God. It's all about the potential. Even right now where we stand, tomorrow holds a certain significance of potential for you. Amen. Something radical can happen tomorrow. Something amazing, something profound, something life-changing can happen tomorrow. Amen. Even though right now you may feel like tomorrow's just Monday, some of us are going to school, some of us are going to work, but something profound can happen. And when you wake up like that every day, it makes life so much more exciting. It makes this walk so much more exciting. And with that, I close. Amen.